Good evening and hello. It is a nice Saturday evening. My name is Yusuf Roshd. I am joined here by two very good friends of mine, Mr. Anton Wong
Hello, hello, hello.
and Mr. Parse Cottrell.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And this is something I've been meaning to do for a long time. I've been doing a little blog for a little bit called Play by Play. So this is the Play by Play podcast, where I have these guys along and we'll be talking about everything that's going on in sports and just little things here and there. The idea really came from the last recent times where Anton would come over and just start asking me a bunch of questions about sports. And I just start answering them for hours on end. Finally, last time we hung out, he just said, okay, you should start a podcast. I said, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast. So yeah, welcome to the Play by Play podcast, hosted by yours truly, Mr. Yusuf Roshd, Anton Wong, and Parse Cottrell. So boys,
Yeah.
what's up?
How's it
We're
going?
finally doing this, huh?
I'm
Yeah.
doing good. That was a great explanation as to how it happened too.
Thank
We
you.
had
Yeah.
a lot of sports talk as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of sports talk that's been going on in this friend group for a while. So I figured, why not? It's about time. So the
Well-
pressing.
Well, first I want to clarify that this is like Yusuf's podcast, but we are here as guest commentators.
Yeah,
Yes, commentators, correct.
but
this is your thing. But we are glad to be on the show.
Honored.
Yes.
great. Then this will be a good time then.
Yes.
But the big reason I kind of wanted to do this is like right now, like this recent time, is because there's been a little bit of a pressing issue in the world of sports recently, and it kind of has to do with race and culture. And I mean, granted, other leagues aren't as bad at it. Some a little worse than others, but as the last month, I want to say last month,
Yes.
yeah, it's been a dumpster fire in the NHL, and it's one thing I really.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been bad, and then it just got worse. But it's also been an issue Anton and I have talked about like in the past, and just like the way the NHL embraces culture and like immigrants. And so I really want to get that like talked about, especially because of the three of us all sitting here are not white.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
I'm just bringing that up right now.
yeah, I just
This is
realized-
audio.
If you're confused by my
this is
voice,
audio.
This is audio, so you're not gonna see what we look like. But I'm Indian, Parse is black, and Anton's Chinese. None of us are white, but we all watch hockey.
Sorry if you're confused. by
Yeah.
my
So we do
voice.
want to preface this by saying that like none of us have actually grown up playing hockey either, but we have. Like we do have a liking for hockey, and we do like watching it.
If anything counts, we all are great ice skaters.
Yeah, I might.
Held a stick on the
I haven't
pond. I
skated
play
in
pond
years,
hockey.
but okay.
That helps.
I've actually been thinking about relearning.
Yeah, well,
Oh.
I mean,
It's a good.
when
it's good,
when it gets cold enough outside, we'll go skating.
for sure.
Yeah, the usual thing. But
Anyway,
yeah. So, obviously, when you talk about this whole thing with race and culture in the NHL, I think a lot of people will immediately direct it to two of the most recent events to happen in the last 3 weeks. The first, of course, being the Don Cherry debacle
Oh boy.
with Sportsnet and the "you people" comment and him losing his job.
Ouch.
And the second and most recent, within the last week, is Calgary Flames head coach Bill Peters, and the allegations saying that he used racial slurs some 10 years ago when he was a coach for the AHL Chicago Blackhawks affiliate team, the Rockford Ice Hogs.
Come on, man.
And, I'm not surprised it sort of went under the radar because the NHL is really good at covering things up. But
Talk about that too.
the thing is within the last few days, a lot of other players that have been coached by Bill Peters have come out saying like, yeah, he's been saying this stuff for years. Like, it's not surprising, and like no one's done anything about it. Just want your takes on that. Like, any thoughts on this whole on that issue, just how the NHL has been covering it up.
Well, like what I can say is, and the NHL's kind of been this whole group, but it's been under the radar mainly because baseball was such a big sport as time progressed. But in any event, the way in the world that we live in now, everything is taken, by microscope, play by play. So when things like this kind of erupt, it kind of brings me back to the whole Donald Sterling episode that happened in the NBA and how that was a bigger controversial issue, of which did end up in a firing. But this one kind of going under the radar, mainly because it's a coach. But at the same time, I think it should be brought into a bigger light because there's no place for it in this world and day and age in sports now. We have too much to live for.
yeah. I think that like these recent events, I sort of echo what the other commentators have said when they say that it seems a little bit indicative of the culture of hockey, how it's kind of stayed mostly the same in the fact that it's been rather
White.
not necessarily not necessarily
we gotta call it as it is.
not
For lack of a
necessarily
better
word,
exclusionary, but it's
right?
pretty. It does feel like to a lot of people to be rather exclusionary. I just, and it might not necessarily be something that people who are in that community are actively trying to do, but it's just something that they're not being fully aware of. Like just thinking about how many non-white people like think about hockey on a regular basis. I'll ask some of my Chinese friends like what they think of Austin Matthews, and they're like, who's that?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll show them a picture of Austin Matthews and like, oh, there's just some random white guy. But then I show them a picture of like Pascal Siakam, and they're like, oh yeah, go Raptors. Like they know like this. It's the difference between the sport of basketball and the sport of hockey. Like one has been a little bit, a lot more accepting of people of any race or ethnicity or skin color, whereas hockey has been tends to have been a little bit less diverse. Yeah.
I think, you know how like in cartoons sometimes you see where it's like, you guys need to do this more, and they're like, okay, we can do that more, and they do like the bare minimum because they don't want to.
You want to mess up a good thing going right now.
Well, here's the thing: is like with the whole like being diverse thing, and this is actually something I was talking to my dad about yesterday, actually on the way to work. Is the NHL's? I don't want to call it an excuse, but I think their logic is, okay, yeah, we can be diverse. Look at how many black players we have. We've got Wayne Simmons and the Subban brothers. Well,
yeah, but if you can count them on two of your hands.
That's the point, right? This league isn't a league that's being very, I guess, pro 2019 ideals. Like they're just keeping it the same, and I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's just a lack of awareness on other groups and just the expansion and the promotion of the game in those communities. Because think about how much it costs to even play hockey.
Yeah.
Because like that was a problem for
yeah.
me when I was growing up. I actually did want to participate in hockey, and to find out that just getting the equipment alone was going to be around $3,000 to $4,000. You had to play in, and then of course start paying your fees for the buses and for the travel and for the games and the hotels. And none of this is all happening before you're even playing single A hockey. We're still talking house league at this point. It's just absurd, and then it kind of pushes people away to start doing things that are easier, like picking up a tennis ball, picking up a basketball, picking up a baseball, and that
Kicking around a soccer ball.
Soccer balls.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to play.
Soccer.
Nobody wants to play a sport that's gonna put you in the hole so deep without any guarantee of you becoming a pro or even a semi-pro athlete at that point.
Yeah, and I think, I sort of echo some of your thoughts there, and but the thing is, it is an expensive sport, but there are like wealthy enough non-white Canadians specifically speaking, and also Americans who very well could afford the sport, but like they're not gonna necessarily enroll their child, maybe because they just think that it's a white person's sport, or it's
the dangers of like
not
concussions and that.
Yeah, of course there's that,
yeah.
and so I think that's just like in general, like and general parenting as well. So that's another topic that we can discuss later on.
Yeah, we can definitely get into that. I think like it's so interesting. And Steve Dangle from of Steve Dangle fame on YouTube. If you don't know him, check him out. He's like amazing. He's like one of those hardcore Leaf fans to ever exist. But he's got his own podcast that he runs with Jesse Blake and Adam Wilde for Sportsnet, or at least I think it's their own thing. I don't think it's actually for Sportsnet, but regardless, they've talked about this in the past of how like hockey is not an easily accessible sport for kids.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And like granted, a lot of sports, they cost a fair amount of money. Like tennis, you got to get rackets and balls and all that. It's not too much, but it's still
but
still an amount.
You can go to the community court.
Yeah,
and it's not like you have to pay for court time like the way you have to pay for
rink time.
You can't get around hockey, man. Like,
No,
you
not
have
to mention
get
there's so many different
so many
barriers regardless. Like with tennis, all you need is like your racket and some balls, and you can get the court whenever, and you don't have to pay for
and
anything.
your tennis shoes and
for
gym clothes.
If you want to play football with your friends, right? You don't really need anything, just the ball.
That's kind of
same with soccer. You just need a ball. But if you're wanting to play hockey, like if you don't have your own skates, well then you're probably renting skates. You have to rent rink time, all the gear that you need, sticks, pucks, bag, pads. All that. Like it's not that easy when you think about it. And
that's a controversial part about it, right? With the NFL.
I wouldn't say it's controversial
because like kids pay for NFL equipment, like no tomorrow, and then reuse, recycle.
Well, yeah, but the thing is though and this is something like again I talked to my dad about is like you look at football players, right? They don't really get serious with football until they're in high school.
Fair enough.
Right, like you're not training your 3-year-old to pull off maybe, yeah, but you're not training your 3-year-old to pull off like a proper sack or learn how to pick.
No,
right?
That's correct.
But there are like one of my really good family friends. His kids have been playing hockey since they were like 2, and I've known them since they were like around 2. They've been playing hockey since they were 2, like just learning to skate and all that. And one of them now is a defenseman for the Grand Canyon University Division I team in Arizona.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, like I love the kid to death. I really hope he gets drafted one day. But that's just like, and I asked his dad the last time I saw him in Miami a few weeks ago. How are the boys doing and all that? He's like, oh, the boys are good. Like we spent a lot of money having him go to games and going for school for hockey and everything. But he's like, the second he gets drafted, like that's my retirement right there. It's like, yeah. And
that sounds like a lot of pressure on the kid.
Yeah.
That's my retirement.
Not to mention he's Division I, so there's that. But like
he's right there. He's so
yeah,
close.
he's right there. He's like the NCAA Division I. Yeah, you're if you're not getting drafted, you're gonna get signed by somebody eventually. If you're
right.
If you can prove it, if you can prove your worth.
Of course,
drafted.
but then it's just like once you get in the league.
Oh, then it's a whole different ballgame.
Like, how long can you last in the league?
Can you survive your 3 years of entry level? Let's see.
And like this is another topic that we can talk about on another podcast.
Yeah.
But like, are you gonna make like smart financial decisions with the money that you get
off the bonus?
Yeah. And so going back to this whole thing, it's like, and of course my family friends are very, very white, and I don't want to use the word very Canadian because this just goes back to the Don Cherry thing or I guess more or less with the Don Cherry thing of how Canadians are supposed to be like white in a sense. Like Canadians that love hockey are supposed to be white. And again, none of us here in this room are white. And I think that just says enough. And it's like the way the NHL, I don't think they're scared of embracing other cultures. They just haven't figured out a way to properly persuade other cultures.
Yeah, I think that's
to bring them into hockey.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's trying to be outright racist. I mean, of course, you're gonna have like your small, situations.
Timmins, Ontario folk,
or well, I don't want to like name any like point out any specific cities because like it could happen in like a diverse city like Toronto.
It could happen here. It happened in Brampton.
Yeah. Not that we want to like call out specific individuals
but,
to keep their anonymity. Yeah, you can share the issue later. But yeah, I think like it's just a factor of being around the people more and just like opening yourself up to that, like people from different cultures or different countries. Like I didn't know much about like Bengali or Indian culture until I became friends with Yusuf.
Yeah.
Right?
Very correct.
Yeah. Like I didn't know much about that. And then like I became friends with them and like had a whole bunch of every year we come to his place and his dad just like cooks the best like Thanksgiving turkey and ribs. And he just like shares stories about like his childhood and like his culture and like the whole culture. I think it's just getting to know people who didn't grow up the way you grew up.
No.
And then like when you have that, then you're your mind is expanded. It's like it's the reason why people are so encouraged to travel, so that they can experience a new place, a new perspective.
See the world in a different light.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And I think I know the NHL was going to like parts of China to actually, now that I think about it, I don't know entirely what they were doing in China, but I know they sent Alexander Ovechkin to China.
They sent the Russian to China. That's
Yeah,
another thing.
they sent the Russian.
They sent the Russian guy to China.
Of all people.
They didn't like.
But,
send like Jordan Binnington.
That would have been great. I'd love to see Jordan Binnington. Just like they're interviewing him, like, oh, Mr. Binnington, how are you?
They didn't send Sidney Crosby. Like, let's just go with like a big star.
Him or McDavid.
Like someone who's super Canadian.
Yeah.
Like I guess, stereotypically. I mean,
stereotypically.
I guess
I mean,
maybe
who has won the
maybe
gold
I'm part of the
medals?
problem. I just said super Canadian, and I just thought of that white guy.
But you think about the countries that won the gold
And
medals,
there's the thing
best
is you're
teams.
thinking about that white guy, and we had this conversation last time about like Timbits and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim Hortons, go get a coffee. The coffee's great, sort of.
Continue.
Yeah. So Timbits hockey has been a huge thing for the last, I think it's been running 20, 30 years now, or something like that, I want to say. And basically, like, what Tim has done and the Tim Hortons Children's Foundation has done with that program and Timbits soccer, and now Timbits baseball, we're doing that too, is helping out those that can't afford to play to have an opportunity to do these sports, like soccer and whatnot, like join like little league teams and all that. And for so many years, Timbits hockey, the numbers that they had were huge as far as kids that were playing hockey. And coincidentally enough, two names that came out of Timbits hockey are Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon, who coincidentally also happen to be from the same town.
Interesting.
Good old Cole Harbor, Nova Scotia. Harbor, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And Tim Hortons just released a advertisement with McDavid, Crosby, and McKinnon, talking about Timbits hockey and like the joy of Timbits and all that stuff. And I haven't heard anything like negative about it or anything like that. But the one thing I did speak to my dad and to the marketing managers at Tim's about one day was, I get like we use Crosby and McKinnon for this because they're Timbits players. It makes the most sense. But even if like they're NHL players that weren't Timbits players, like Tim's is a major sponsor of the National Hockey League. We could use other Canadian players that are like local to the area, ask them. It'll cost a ton of money probably. Like Crosby ain't cheap.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. He
No,
ain't cheap
I
at
don't-
all.
I
No.
don't
We get
imagine
Jordan
him to
Spencer.
be.
Far from it. But it's like, here in Ontario, like, if we want to be more diverse, like, if the NHL wants to, like, be more diverse, because most of the kids that play Timbits are white. There's a few, like, other races, but, like, the Subans are probably, like, one of my favorite examples to use of, like,
Timbits, yeah.
well, they didn't do Timbits, but of a family of non-white hockey players that made it.
Good.
And they're Ontario born and raised, and they played hockey in Scarborough.
Yeah.
Even a better example, I didn't even think of him until my dad brought it up, and I have his jersey in my room. Nasim Kadri,
Oh yeah.
Yep.
born in London, Ontario,
Very
like as Don Cherry says, a good Ontario boy. Dude grew up in London. Dude played hockey for like in the OHL and everything, and made it to the Maple Leafs. And then he got traded from the Leafs, but that's another story for another time.
Well right now.
But the fact of the matter is he's doing well, and he's also not a white hockey player born in Canada. He is a Canadian hockey player that doesn't look like the stereotypical Canadian that is doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Why, like, we could be using, I say using that like it's a bad thing, but embracing it.
Yeah.
Is a
He
better
could
way of putting
be, the.
Like a spokesperson for...
Well, yeah,
well-
he could be like the model for other people to look at them and think, oh, I can do this now. Like, this is something that is within the realm of possibilities. So just speaking within, the Asian Canadian, Asian American community.
Right.
Like when people saw Sandra Oh on Grey's Anatomy, they're like, hey, that's an Asian person in like a strong, like, positive role.
Yeah.
Like, and that made a lot of people, and also she's a woman too. Like that made a lot of people think like, oh, this is like a career that I can actually do. This is, you know, when people see themselves on screen or in other people in like positions of power.
Correct.
Like I'm sure like Barack Obama, I'm sure was a big thing for lots of people.
Yeah.
Or like they saw him up there and like, oh, this is an actual thing that like is actually possible for me.
It's saying that the sky's the limit, anything's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trump got elected, but okay.
One of
That's
the
a different
biggest
story.
things, like for Chicagoans, when they talk about Barack and everything, it's about the Chicago Library and the presidential library and what it's supposed to mean for the community in terms of bringing in extra opportunities for education purposes, so that other kids can realize that dream the same way. Because a lot of people follow Obama as a trademark towards that kind of success, even if you don't reach that point. And it's that type of remarkable occasionism and focus that really drives people to be more than what they are and exceptional, like what you said about Sandra Oh. Like I say it when I used to watch Kobe and when he was playing in his days, how much inspiration I got from watching him. And then growing up to see guys like Denzel Washington and Bernie Mac and how they dressed and kind of inspirationalize myself into becoming more of an empowered black individual and being proud of my own skin to do decisions and make decisions, even to learn Chinese one day. So
yeah. If you guys don't know, Parse is a black man
so,
who can speak Mandarin, which is cool. Great because like I'm Chinese and I don't even know how to speak Mandarin. So yeah.
I've spoken to once in my sleep. That's about it.
Yes, these are all different stories that we will get to at other
some point.
podcasts.
At other times.
Points.
So
but
stay tuned.
Like, going back to the topic is the way the NHL has been like handling foreign affairs, if you could call it, it's not clean. Foreign affairs. It's not the cleanest way. It's not the dirtiest way either. But it's like after this whole thing with Bill Peters came out with the Calgary Flames, it's like I was explaining this earlier. It's like, okay, how did he get away with that when he was coaching an AHL team
for so long?
Like, yeah, 10 years. Like that's that. And with all the reports of like other he was Bill Peters was actually, man, this is if you couldn't ask for a bigger dumpster fire, here's one. Bill Peters used to be the assistant coach for the Detroit Red Wings when Mike Babcock was still our head coach.
Oh.
Nice. Oh, God, Babcock. He's not a racist, though. At least I hope he's not. But
only time will tell.
Former, oh yeah, you never know. Former Red Wings players have spoken out about Bill Peters, and all the things you've said. Ron Francis, who's now the general manager of the soon-to-be Seattle team, when he was in charge in Carolina, Bill Peters was working for him then too, and Ron Francis knew about this. He actually said in a statement earlier, I want to say today or yesterday, he knew all the things that were going on with Bill Peters and said, we have taken immediate action to deal with this. And that was a few years ago. So have you taken immediate action? Because these things are starting to come back and they're starting to haunt you.
See how that was under the radar? Like the general public didn't really get a true vision into this problem until this year. And I think that's where the problem lies. We can't keep promoting this type of hidden, under the rug. It just makes everybody who's along the way, and I'm not trying to point fingers or anything, but it seems like everybody along the way had a part to play in this role of it becoming so big. It should have been nipped in the bud, even from the individual itself in those prior years. The fact that it's come up now means that there was an ignorance. There was obviously a lack of judgment, a lack of character to even still continue hiring this person. And
right.
Now to have it blow up like this, where it's detrimental to even Canadian hockey itself, it's downright detrimental.
Yeah.
It is. And the other thing, too, is, like, the way... I don't want to say the NHL, like, intentionally hides... Not to promote, too, but intentionally, like, hides things. But one thing I did remember was... Oh, I'm Googling this. Did they do anything about him?
While you're doing that,
yeah.
Someone did bring it up that, like, it's possible that if he was easier to work with and delivering results.
Delivering results.
Delivering results and quote unquote apart from his comments, was a general person who was easy to work with for the front office and back office.
Yeah.
Then maybe he might not. Then people are saying that maybe he might not have been so like put in the position that he was, to where he
That
then
position of
resigned.
power,
Mhm.
where you do things like that.
Yeah,
Oh.
like maybe, I don't know. Like it's hard to say, but I think like the him making saying the racial slur, like that news coming out, it made it a lot easier for them to like sort of say like, oh, this is not something that we support. And it's
Right.
also like the fact that they didn't. The thing is, like, they didn't fire him; he resigned.
Yeah.
That's another part of it. I mean, I want to take this point actually to talk about CBC, because what they did in the Don Cherry situation, they did in a way act correctly, because they didn't let it escalate farther than a month. They offered several chances for Don to apologize about the situation.
Was it CBC or was it, or Sportsnet?
It's Sportsnet.
Sportsnet?
Yeah.
Sportsnet,
not
yeah.
CBC.
And then through Sportsnet, given those opportunities and then having to come up with that resolution, it's fair on both sides, right? Because at that point, Don had his chances, and of course, Sportsnet won. So some form of remorse and kindness before they went ahead with this whole decision. And we can't blame them on that fault. This situation is completely different.
Right, but I think the thing is too is Bill Peters admitted that he said everything he said.
Yeah.
And has, I think, apologized for it, as far as I know, in that letter he wrote that was out on social media. I want to say yesterday, the day before that. Don Cherry straight up said he's not taking anything about what he said back.
But they are like what they said was also different as well. They're like kind of different situations.
Different results too, right?
Yeah.
Don got fired. He resigned.
Yeah.
Don was let go.
But
as I say.
one thing I do want to bring up. I don't know how long we want to make this podcast, or how far along.
I don't know if you want to switch the topic.
We
yeah.
can switch the topic. We're going about an
yeah.
hour
So
from
then
now.
I do want to kind of transition into talking a little bit more on the other side of stories about Bill Peters, and something that's kind of a big part of, for better or for worse, hockey culture is, the sort of abuse and like allegations of people, him being very strong-armed to his players, and this is not just something that happens with him. It happens with like so many other hockey coaches. Like there are, former AHL and also like former NHL players who have mostly been AHL, but have played a couple of games in the NHL. They have had stories about like they were locked in, like the hazing practices of the players. Like, oh yeah, you're locked in a locker room completely naked or something like that. Just like the humiliation and like the abuse of like, yeah, and it's just like, these that's just how it is. It just is what it is. And then like I think that's something. It doesn't have to be that way.
No,
No,
have you heard
You don't
the
need to
story
be-
with Mitch Marner and Mike Babcock?
Yeah, I heard that he was like abusive to him.
Yeah, so basically what happened was in Mitch Marner's rookie year, this is what I remember reading from the story. Babcock basically trapped him in a room, like cornered him one day, and said, "Oh, Mitch, you're a good kid and a good player, and I need you to do me a favor."
What was that?
It was my bad Babcock impression.
That was a very just use your voice.
Yeah, it's fun saying good plur. That's about it.
Okay.
That's the worth it part about him. So he told Marner, he's like, here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a list of all the boys on the roster, and you're going to tell me who works the hardest and who doesn't work the hardest, including yourself. And what Mitch did was he put himself last, saying he doesn't work the hardest because he was just a rookie back then, and also he was terrified that Mike Babcock was cornering him about this. And he made this list, gave it to Babs, and the next thing Babs did was show the entire team that list.
Wow.
Before a game.
Wow.
And that just makes me think, like, Babcock was kind of a bad human at some times. He's a good coach, but I think in his later years, especially with like those later years in Detroit, he would do a few of the same things, and by the time he came to Toronto, it was just like full force. He just I don't know if he thought this, but it was just like, okay, yeah, I have like a lot of power now because all these kids are like literal children. Like most of the team was under the age of 28 back then by the time he started. And so he was like, yeah, okay, I can force these kids to play in the way I want to play them and make them the way I want to make them. Because that's what Babcock's known for. Babcock's known for having good developed teams. The Leafs just weren't that team yet. And he got away with all of it? Yes, he did. He's not the only coach to do it. I'm sure a ton of other coaches or past coaches.
There's some Joe Quenneville stories.
Sure. There's definitely some Joe Quenneville stories. I wouldn't be surprised. Honestly, I'm surprised there's no stories about Patrick Waugh when he was coach for Colorado. Maybe there are, but they won't talk about that later. Actually, I should finish reading his book. But there comes this is something we were talking about earlier before we started recording this. There comes a point where I think people think they're so strong in an organization where they have like almost like diplomatic immunity. If it's a good way of putting it. And just quickly going back to like the whole race thing is like when someone like Bill Peters or Mike Babcock says, these kinds of things, like, can you get away with that? Okay, their head coach, sure you can get away with that. And then how many years ago was the Donald Sterling thing? Like 2000.
That was 2012, 2013.
That was a while ago. Wow.
Around that time.
Yeah, like Donald Sterling, the owner of a basketball team.
Not just any.
Yeah, the Clippers.
This is Staples Center. This is
Staples
Hollywood
Center team, and saying all these like horrible racist things. It's like, you can't forgive him just because he's a billionaire. The owner.
Given
of the
that
team,
you
right?
didn't know he was even being recorded at the time by his own girlfriend. But
Still,
we're gonna
regardless,
bypass
like
that,
saying that,
been like
saying
So
that.
it's like then it's just him saying he's sorry he got caught. He's not.
Yeah, exactly.
That was one of his ways of trying to get out of it.
The thing too is like
no
he's been saying that stuff for years. So it's like, at a point people think they're immune, but then you realize like these things are gonna come back to get you eventually, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to the the very sort of aggressive nature of the current hockey culture.
Hockey life, hockey culture.
Yeah, like I know someone who is an officiant with minor hockey in Ontario, in Canada, and they've told me about how kids as young as 8 and 9 have gotten like penalty time for saying certain curse words, and apparently like they added a new rule where like they have 2 different kinds of consequences depending on what you say. Like if it's if you use a 4-letter word, then it's this consequence, or if you use like a racial slur or
if
call
you're
someone
an
a body
8-year-old
part,
using a racial slur, it's a major penalty. 4 minutes
like,
in the box.
They're
Go.
kids as young as 8, and they're
They shouldn't be saying
super
this to
aggressive.
begin with.
And like I don't know if you've ever gone to a hockey game
I've
for
gone to
kids
the
and
TV
seen like a
games.
hockey parent. They
hockey
are
moms.
so
Oh.
not just moms,
Hockey
like
dads,
hockey dads
too, yeah.
too, like hockey parents.
They're
They
rough.
can just be
Oh,
so
they're ruthless.
intense.
Yeah.
Sometimes I compare them to the grittiness of a NCAA parent at a good Michigan versus Ohio State game. It's not intense. It's just not intense.
Okay, before Yusuf
Kills Parse.
explodes, yeah, it's just so like the parents are kind of contributing to that, like, come on, like the aggression, and then of course the coaches are being aggressive with the kids, and then the kids are going to be aggressive with each other.
Everybody's
And then like how does that lead on in like elsewhere in life? Like hopefully they're like, I'm sure there's plenty of like people who are nice individuals, but like hopefully they can divide like, oh, this is just on ice, and then this is off ice.
Yeah.
But like
and that's how you should be, and that's how the Boston Bruins were formed.
and like hopefully that is the case, but even then it shouldn't be that like it doesn't need to be the case that you have to be aggressive like that, like an abusive and humiliating people in order to get results out of people, out of especially kids as young as 7 and 8. Like, yeah, you want to let them know that like if you didn't make the goal, then you failed that shot.
Oh.
But it's not like, you shouldn't like humiliate the kid and then like be so verbally aggressive or abusive. You should say like, oh, here is what you should do instead. Or, like, practice harder. You need to practice harder. Like, you can do that without, throwing a chair against the wall or something.
Have either of you guys ever seen the Mighty Ducks movie?
I have not.
I
actually have not. I feel so bad about that.
Absolutely, I gotta rewatch it. Beautiful movie. Gordon Bombay, the worst possible person to be a minor league hockey kid. But he like in the movie, he does that. He will tell these kids, he's like, you can't skate. If you can't do this, you're a loser. We don't like losers here. Blah blah blah. It's just like basically just talking down to these children and being like, look, you're all losers here, okay? I can't trust any of you. You're all bad. You all suck. You miss a goal, that's fine. You're a loser. What are you gonna do about it?
I'm okay. You know what? I might have seen like parts of the movie, but
great movie.
That, like, I think I'm now more reminded of the sensei from Karate Kid of Cobra Kai.
Please tell me you're talking about the Mr. Miyagi.
Sorry?
The original one.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Not Chinese guys.
No, I mentioned Cobra Kai.
Yeah, I know. So that's Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah. No, man.
Yeah,
Jaden Smith, man. Best Karate Kid movie ever. Hot take right here. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. No. That's going to be, okay, for the rest of the podcast, forget hockey. We're going to talk about how much I love Karate Kid, the
Jaden Smith
The Jaden Smith, Will Smith reboot. That's hot.
Is he in that movie?
It was directed, executive produced by Will Smith.
Of course it was. But yeah, it's like, okay, back to hockey. It's like, I think eventually it'll get to a point where more coaches are getting caught out for saying like basically ruining the lives of their kids.
That was going to be my next question. Is that, do you guys see more or less of this in the future?
More or less hazing?
Yes.
I'm thinking there's going to be less.
It's going to be less?
I hope there's less.
I hope
I mean, obviously, I hope there's less. But I'm thinking that after this, this sort of
whole fiasco.
Yeah, this whole thing that has now like come to light, like for the community and sort of revealing its shortcomings of when it comes to how people like the culture, like the very aggressive negative culture. I think that they will do a correction, because otherwise if they don't, the whole like concussion thing and like that's already pulling kids, like parents are pulling kids out of hockey
or
and
just
like,
not getting them into it in the first place.
or just not getting them into it anyway. So like that's already one contributing factor. If like there's that, and like if I were a parent and I knew heard that like my kid might get some like abuse or aggression or something like that, I'm pulling my kid out of hockey.
Yeah,
good parent. I mean, no. What I wanted to reiterate what you said is that I hope that the NHL has more of a focus group that's determined to getting to these cases a lot sooner.
Isn't that supposed to be the point of the Department of Player Safety?
I mean, good point.
Or I guess should be the point of the Department of Player Safety?
At this point, they need to start looking at the Olympics and taking pointers, because those guys are on that doping scene like no tomorrow, and even the marijuana cases.
Well, I mean,
the NFL.
The Olympics has its own
controversy. I mean, maybe we
sketchiness going on with the just and whole like allegations of bribery and scandals of other controversies.
It's like,
I get kind of
the Department of Player Safety in the NHL. They focus obviously on like the physical injuries that these players are taking.
Mm-hmm.
But I think now that this is coming out, is they should probably take a good look at that department again and be like, okay, well, we know that our players are getting hazed by their own coaches. We should do something about this. What they will do, I don't know. I'm not the Department of Player Safety. I wouldn't know. But they should do something. Like, they should take some kind of action heading into the future, especially if they want to keep hockey as a growing market. Because even, like, this season, like this current season that we are in, the projected cap was supposed to be $83 million. And by the time the draft happened, it was $81.5 million. So they lost money this past season.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, yeah, okay.
Like revenue was down?
Yes.
Oh.
Attendance has been down in a lot of places too.
Yeah.
Not like baseball levels are bad, but like it's like for a hockey or
We can
hockey,
do that in another podcast episode.
Yeah, but for hockey levels, like it's still bad. I mean,
there are
still some cities, that'll keep their attendances like super high. Obviously, those are the teams that are doing well, but even for the teams that aren't, like there's some that are still doing good. The Florida Panthers have increased their attendance like amazingly over the last like few years because they've actually been doing well.
Yeah. I can say, Florida Panthers doing well.
The Florida Panthers are
10
doing
years
well.
ago, I would have laughed at that.
You're not lying when you say
No.
that. You're not blowing smoke, right?
Hey, you know what? Actually, this is a really good. I'll get to this in a second. But then you go to other cities like you can go to Toronto. Granted, going to a Leafs game at home
Of
is
course.
super expensive,
Yes.
and
Most
the
definitely.
people that do afford to go either spent like 3 months worth of like work savings to go, or someone that has season tickets and went, which is normally what I do. Is I just go with someone that has season tickets because it's easier and cheaper until you get food. And for the last few games I've seen at the now Scotiabank Center, for the most part, it's been pretty packed up. It's mainly Leafs fans, a few visiting fans here and there, depending on who they're playing. Detroit's attendance has been god awful, but that's because the Red Wings are in rebuilding mode, and that's understandable. But even for a team that has its like up and down days, like every team has their up and down days, but some days they're like, what the hell? Like, who is this team? This is not the team we cheer for. This is not the team that's like normally doesn't mean anything. Like, I have seen TD Garden half empty.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
Boston
sports, man.
Yeah, that's
if
Boston
you're not
sports
doing
we're
well,
talking
you
about.
will hear about it.
Yeah. This is like Boston sports fans are some of the most passionate people I've ever heard about.
Living in that city for 4 years of my life, I learned two things about them. They are extremely passionate about sports in all facets, except MLS.
I'm not sure.
I wouldn't know, but and they are extremely, no pun intended, patriotic and obnoxious to their sports. Like, man, even like I saw a home game the same time the Red Sox were in the World Series last year, and the arena was full.
Wow.
Tickets were super cheap because everyone was like, who gives a hell about hockey right now because the Red Sox are in the World Series. But like, even for a game that was not as important because the World Series is going on, like, yeah, they can still fill up that crowd. But seeing it half empty when they were going on a little bit of a slump a few years back, it's just such an interesting sight to see. Like, I love it. It sounds terrible, but I like seeing crowds that are half full, so to speak, if you're looking at it like the half empty, half full way. Because it shows a few things about like the way a team sort of gives back to the fans, right? And shows like what kind of people the fans really are. Like, Steve Dangle always asks with the Leafs, like, are you in? And yeah, Leafs fans are always in. They'll show up to games. The Leafs were bad for like 10 straight years or something before Matthews showed up, and they're still showing up to games. They're paying like $300 a ticket, but they're still showing up. And I don't know what it really is at the end of the day, but yeah, they are losing attendance in most stadiums, and especially the teams that aren't doing hot. Of course, they're going to be losing attendance because no one wants to go see a losing team, right? But for in this past decade, the teams you wouldn't expect to be having good attendance have had good attendance, like all the coastal teams, like California, like the Kings when they won their 2 cups. The Sharks have had great attendance. The Panthers have had great attendance. The Lightning have had great attendance because
Well, they're not a coastal team.
Well, I'm not
really
what I mean by
about that,
coastal, but like
regardless.
you get like
Yeah, sure,
places
okay.
you wouldn't really see hockey.
Sure.
Bad wording, but you get the idea.
And
And then Vegas showed up,
Yeah.
and
Great
people go
job.
to Vegas games. People like seeing hockey there. People are enjoying seeing hockey more in a literal desert than in like Chicago or something.
It's just the way that the team's been playing so far. it's hard to be a fan, and I'm not saying that Chicago fans are on the same level of Boston fans, but we care about our teams right now too. The Bulls attendance right now, we're hopeful, but at the same time we're a little disappointed that we're not at least 500 and 9th, 10th seed right now.
Yeah, but
so it's just like that.
I think that going back to this whole topic is like with the NHL losing money, like they have to realize that something's up. Like sure, $1.5 million isn't like that much of a difference. It does make a big difference in cap space for teams because that's another $1.5 million they could have for another player for a bigger contract. But it's like they have to sit there, and I hope they do, and look at these numbers and go, okay, well, here's what's happening. Like we're seeing an increase in X, but we're seeing a decline in like Y and Z. How do we fix Y and Z? How do we bring that back on an increase?
You said Z.
I was gonna say Z, and I'm like,
Z.
you know.
No, man, we in Canada.
We're
gonna say Z.
We're
gonna spell all of our words with U.
Yep.
O-U-R. Color.
And so it's like they have to take a good look and think, okay, how do we fix this problem? How do we get people to go to games again? Like regardless of your team just completely being god awful, how do we get people to go to games again or buying merch or anything like that? Like,
I think that like just in general they gotta like figure out how to make hockey cool again, like to people in general, like especially to a lot of immigrants who are coming over. We're in Canada and we're known as a country of immigrants. There are so many immigrants, specifically, from all different countries, but also a lot of, visible minority immigrants, a lot of whom are coming from Asia, specifically, like South Asia and East Asia, like folks coming in from China, folks coming in from, India and Pakistan and
all these other countries.
And the Philippines. And like, you ask, like I'll ask a Filipino friend of mine about the Leafs and be like, oh yeah, I don't really know or like follow them at all. And then I'll ask them about like, hey, so what do you think of Lowry? Oh yeah, well Lowry is like they're so passionate about basketball, and that like goes the same for most of my non-white friends as well. Like I think they need to promote more to appeal to like visible minorities.
Yeah.
Because I think that will be what saves their tickets, because it's very much growing for basketball. It's very like NBA is doing really well. Like they're continuing to grow.
And as far as like international viewership goes, it's just they just keep growing and growing and growing. Like this past summer, I was watching the NBA finals in Singapore on TV. Like I didn't have to stream it.
Wow. In like a restaurant or something?
No, in my own condo.
I'm surprised.
On Sky Sports.
That's probably the most surprising.
Oh, Sky Sports has it.
Sky Sports is broadcasting the NBA.
Really?
Yeah. They were broadcasting the NBA finals. I got to watch the Toronto Raptors beat Golden State.
That is
in Singapore without having to whip my laptop out, hook it up to a TV, and find some shady streaming site.
Yeah, it's as surprising as them actually winning the ring.
Like the year before that, I was in literally the middle of nowhere in Bangladesh, in the village side, visiting my family out there. And we have a little like one of those like old TVs from the 90s. We have one of those there in our place, and granted the signal wasn't that great, but without having to stream anything, without having to hook anything up, I was watching Cleveland versus Golden State.
Yeah, and that like I'm guessing that TV was one where it only picks up like 5 channels.
Yeah.
Wow.
And one of those channels was broadcasting.
Was a sports channel broadcasting the NBA finals.
Wow.
In a village in the southern regions of Asia.
Yeah.
Like
that's
what?
Yeah, that really shows something. But like you won't get that with NHL. Of course, you can't really necessarily play hockey as much.
I mean,
in
there
hotter
is a
country.
hockey team in Kenya.
I'm sure there's like
that's about it.
Like you can put a rink. You can technically build a rink anywhere, but that goes back to it being expensive.
The other thing too is
sport.
Singapore. Interestingly enough, they've been building a lot more rinks around town. I've been noticing that the last year or two when I've been visiting, is they've been building like a few more rinks here and there. And I'll go by them. I go visit them, or walk around them, and like people are skating and whatnot.
Mhm.
And the last time I went back by there this past summer, my sister and I were like walking by it, and she was asking me, she's like, "Oh, but people are just skating, like they wouldn't be playing hockey or anything, would they?" I don't know. And I start looking around, and I realized they have like all the netting that they would have for like a hockey game.
Mhm.
They have a scoreboard and
Mhm.
everything, and I'm just like, and I'm looking at the rink, and I go, "Oh, everything's like actually like marked on the ice for like a hockey game. Like there's
Mhm.
blue lines, there's
Yeah.
center line,
Yeah.
like offside zones and like or zones and whatnot."
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh? Like I get, and I asked someone that was working around there, and they were telling me, yeah, like some of the schools around Singapore actually have hockey teams now.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, that's a start,
There's
Yeah.
hope.
There's
hope.
hope. but that's not going to change everything. Just one
Yeah.
little, country like the dot that Singapore is
There.
having hockey.
Yeah.
And I know the way that we're doing good. The way that like the other, well, mainly the NBA, has reached out towards like other countries to bring players in. And like obviously because basketball is a lot more easily accessible than hockey is. But with like these countries are building rinks now. Like maybe the NHL should start doing a little more research and send people over there, being like, "Hey, you guys have a rink set up? No, you ever thought about playing hockey professionally? Try it, or just playing hockey?"
Or yeah, like if they build a rink enough to fill an audience, maybe they can just do a couple of exhibition games there.
Yeah.
Like
And
the
start promoting
NFL
it.
does like exhibition games in
London.
in London, right?
In London, yeah.
So they can do something like that.
Start
Yeah.
promoting in Africa, where it should be promoted.
Yeah. But, why not? It's like there's so many things that the NHL could do and should do. Whether they would do it or not, that's up to them. That's not up to us to decide, because
Mhm.
we're
Be
just
foretold.
three 23-year-olds sitting in a house talking about this.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe even
Yeah.
less, in the direction that the NHL goes. Because I think, especially with the way people going to games, obviously, like, you get your revenue from ticket sales and whatnot. And part of me thinks the streaming market, like Twitch and all those guys, they might have an impact on that soon. We don't know. Or Twitch could get involved and, be able to stream games from there. Like, they could partner with the NHL and the
Oh, like
NBA.
how like Facebook Live is broadcasting MLB games,
Yeah,
and like
kinda like that.
YouTube
yeah.
on YouTube
Yeah,
as
like
well.
YouTube TV or whatever it's
Yeah,
called. Yeah.
YouTube Premium.
They could do that. There's so many, like, the world is becoming more and more and more easily accessible as the days go by, with all this like crazy technology
Mhm.
that's coming out. It's like, like, I'm not saying they're the definite answers that a league needs to solve a problem,
Mhm.
but they are there,
Yeah,
and
you
they
know,
could just try it out. Like, it's not gonna hurt too much. I
yeah,
don't think.
like to the to the kids whom I've spoken to, and like from also what I've read online, it's like hockey has not necessarily been like promoted to them as much
No.
as or like it's not something that they see as like a super cool thing as it has been back in like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Now they're like it's basketball, it's possibly soccer, but it's basketball and it's esports.
Yep. Esports has become
or
a huge
streaming,
thing.
like video games, like
Disney Sports.
like oh my gosh. Okay, anyway, so yeah, like NHL now has to compete with everything, because everything is now accessible to everyone who has an internet connection.
Yeah.
Like, just as much as I can watch an NHL game, I can also watch a soap opera from the Philippines. I can also watch, a cricket match in, in India
yeah.
or something. You
Yeah.
know, like I can. There's so many things that you can do with the internet, and you just got to figure out, like, with all this noise going on, like what makes you stand out.
What's your frequency?
Sure, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, what's your frequency?
What's your frequency
Nice.
Yeah.
with all this bandwidth?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, it's crazy how easily accessible everything's become. And even with esports, like, going back to this whole thing we were talking about in the beginning of how, you know, like, getting into certain sports, it's tough because of, like, monetary reasons. Esports, it's so much easier now because, like, mobile esports are becoming a thing.
Oh yeah.
Like, there are these huge
There's,
tournaments for, like,
huge
mobile
tournaments
esports.
for,
Yeah, it's
like,
crazy.
game I follow
Yeah.
a lot, Clash
It's-
of Clans. So
Oh, God.
full,
You in that game.
full
But
tournaments.
it's
and
wild
good.
how,
It's good.
how easily everything has become for people to really get into it. And hockey still sort of hasn't embraced that. Like, they haven't figured their own way of doing that yet. Even baseball, like, you don't have to spend a ton of money in getting into baseball. All you need is a ball, a bat, and a glove.
The glove may cost you a little bit.
Depends what kind of glove you get.
But like,
Yeah,
I mean,
but regardless,
hockey equipment.
it's
costs
not.
way
It's
more.
gonna cost you
If we're
like.
comparing to hockey, there's no question.
It's gonna cost you like what? Maybe like
I mean, if you
less
have
than half of
Yeah,
what you would be paying for hockey
I don't
equipment.
think you're
Yeah.
Yeah.
gonna be
Or
able
like,
to get to
yeah,
that.
you got
Like maybe you get the
gloves, you get a
stuff.
bat,
Yeah.
you got cleats,
Yeah, that's
Um,
right. You gotta get cleats too.
you got a ball, and you probably, I don't know, you maybe wear some like
Knee
baseball
pads,
pants.
dude,
Yep.
shin pads, shin pads.
Yeah, probably. And then of course, enrolling, like, paying
Yeah.
the annual fee for.
But then it also depends if you're a catcher, you need more.
Well,
Sure.
yeah, I guess.
Well, sometimes the team might like
They might
pay.
split.
Yeah, they
They-
might spot
That's
for.
why I
Yeah,
say, like,
subsidized,
balls
yeah.
and stuff is a little-
Subsidizing for younger leagues makes a lot of sense. But, and the thing is, like, with soccer, right? Like, I've got a lot of friends from, like, the Southeast Asian region that I met through school. There's a lot of very good
Mhm.
friends of mine. And they're all humongous soccer fans. And that's all they ever talk about
Mhm.
besides music is soccer. And it's just because the culture of soccer has been so heavy in that region. You gotta look, like, most of these soccer players you're seeing, like, the big names, none of them are Asian. They're all mainly either, like, some kind of South American or European. But it's because the culture of soccer has become so big, and soccer's as
Also, like
easy as,
they're following like Champions League.
yeah, like
and stuff
Champions League, like all that.
EPL.
I once got into an
League,
argument with a friend of mine
EPL.
because he's a humongous fan of Manchester United. But yeah, it's like most of these
Posh.
guys that are playing are European or South American, and because soccer is as easy as I'm not saying soccer is an easy sport, but getting into the sport itself, playing it with your friends and enjoying it is as easy as kicking a ball. You know,
or something you can fashion into a ball.
that too.
Yeah,
Clever.
That's really how it goes. Like it makes it easy. All you need to do is spend the money on a ball. You can just use 2 trees as a net, or you can use a random wall as a net. Like you can do
Those are
anything
all
you
the
want.
stories of what I used to do as a kid.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
things like kids used to do in like elementary school. Like I remember doing that in elementary, but it's like people can use their imagination to play, and it makes everything easier. And oh man, I didn't want to bring this up, but I guess I am. With hockey, even if you want to play like for fun without like ball hockey, for example.
Oh man, I mean,
I don't know-
There is
I don't
a
know.
way to get around it because you can still use the trees and stuff, but like
Well,
you
yeah.
can't really play outside that.
But
well.
my example I was going to use here, is
the chalk on the wall.
no.
I did that.
Although we
I
did
did the
used
chalk
to
on
do
the
that.
wall. It was still
The only times I'd play, I wouldn't play like, well, yeah, I guess it was ball hockey, but we'd use like actual sticks. Was back when we were in high school. It's been some time since we were out of high school. But
Yeah.
back when we were in high
not
school.
that long. But
No,
Fun
it was-
fact is that we all
yeah,
went to the same
a
high
few
school.
years now. But so Anton and I were both in the music department at our school,
Mm-hmm.
and every year at the end of it, we'd have this like finale concert that we would hold in the back parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And in our grade 10 year, it sort of became like a little tradition with a couple friends, where a dear friend of mine
Oh yes.
would bring his sticks over, and we would play ball hockey in the parking lot before the concert started. And it was always fun. We would take like a part of the back wall of the school and use that as one net. We'd take
Mhm.
another wall and use it as another net. And not a lot of us would play, but it'd be like 4 or 5 people maybe, and it was just an enjoyable time. Like for me personally, because I don't play hockey, it's the closest thing I could get to it, and it's enjoyable for me to be able to spend that time with people that do play hockey. And not most, but all the guys I would play with, again, are not white. So a couple of them play hockey, but none of us were, we don't look white, and we're not white in any way. And yeah, that's the beauty of it. Is like you could still find a way to do that, and it really hurts me talking about this because the guy in question, or statement that I'm talking about, is unfortunately no longer with us. Passed away a few years ago.
And I think that's actually a good well, maybe not that part of it, but
Well, but
ending on a note of like this is about the kids,
Yeah,
right? Because
it is.
that's kind of as cliche as it sounds. Like, kids are the future. They are literally the future of your sport. They're going to dictate whether or not
What's cool? What's
like
not cool?
yeah, what's
Yeah.
cool and what's not cool, and then also like your both your employees and your customers of who's going to watch,
Yep.
And
who's going to buy tickets, and then who's going to play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you can just find ways to get
Promote it.
kids to enjoy the sport, and not be so afraid of being ousted as an outsider because of a certain part of you, like your skin color or religion or whatever, what have you.
Got you on that. Yeah.
Then, and you're not afraid of being humiliated or abused or anything like that,
Yep.
then you're going to want to play the sport. And I think hockey, as a general culture, needs to, needs to rethink that. And I mean, of
I
course,
think the word you
we're very much armchair experts here. We're like,
Yeah.
we're just giving
For
our
sure,
2
for
cents.
sure,
Like, I'm
for
not
sure.
Yeah.
like I said, I did not grow up playing hockey, although I did somewhat grow up watching hockey and enjoying it.
Go Minnesota
So-
Wild.
Yeah.
Or whoever Anton's cheering for that
Yeah.
time around.
I think we need to. I think what we need to say in regards to that situation is we need to make hockey more inclusive. We need to make hockey more less culture appropriated, and we need to make it more of a system that's about belonging.
Well, we can say whatever the heck we want to say about what they should do. It's whether or not they listen.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, it's all up to the NHL, whether they listen to what's going on in this strange world of hockey.
But anyway, yeah, that was my final 2 cents. Parse,
Okay.
did you
any more closing
I think
thoughts
that
before we call it a
those,
day?
those are your final
I
two-
think before we close anything, we really should talk about favorite teams and why.
All right,
How
let's
we
get
were
this out of the way.
all
Sure,
I
why
high
not?
school
I think we should
colleagues.
Or do you want to
say
save that for another time?
Okay, we'll mention them.
We'll just
and
mention
Yeah, we'll
them.
mention
and then
them
give a
and
quick,
just a quick
blurb of why,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we'll save that our defense of the team and our love for that team
On
in
a
another
later
podcast.
time.
Another podcast.
Oh,
We
yeah.
don't want to get to it.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah.
just a
It'll
quick
also
2
get
cents.
more interesting now that
Sure.
when people know. I'm not starting. Parse, go.
Okay, so, first and foremost, my favorite teams, and will always be to the end of time, Chicago teams. So my favorite hockey team is the Chicago Blackhawks. Shout out to 2010, 2013, and 2016. all of which-
2015. It was 2015
Man,
because they beat the Lightning that year.
man,
Corey Crawford got a shutout, Game 7.
okay. So like, in regards to all that, those are my favorite teams, and I don't rep anybody else, but Toronto, so we have to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, we
still
are in
live-
Toronto. in
We
case you
do
guys-
indeed live in the. We technically don't live in the GTA.
No, we do. We live in the Greater Toronto
Oh, boy.
area.
Is Richmond Hill in the
Just,
GTA?
just
Yes.
claim
Oh.
it. Just
Yes.
claim
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess so. Okay,
Just
sure.
claim
Why not?
Yes. Anyway,
Go Barry Colts.
if you can still
No.
get there in less than an hour, you should claim it.
That's fair.
anyway, Anton here. My quote unquote favorite team, or the team that I cheer for, has been the Winnipeg Jets
Hey.
for a while. Like since they
Since
like
they
they got
came back.
Since
since
inception.
they came back and they got him from Atlanta.
Yep.
This was back in 2012. I remember like hearing the news and I'm like, I want to cheer for the Winnipeg Jets because I want to cheer for a team that people go, oh yeah, they exist. I forgot about that.
Well,
And I love being undermined, And then, like that's why I also like cheering for Minnesota sports as well because you're always like, oh yeah, I guess they're a team. Are they doing well? Yeah, I guess. Oh wow, they're actually doing not terribly.
Yeah.
And like that's just kind of been both like Minnesota sports and also the Winnipeg Jets, like for the budget that they were given.
yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to either Minneapolis or Winnipeg, but I cheer for those teams because I like the story behind it.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's
Yeah,
completely understandable.
that was my quick 2 cents with it.
Yeah, at least you're not. You're some people like me who just have a bunch of different teams they cheer for, or
Yes.
wear different jerseys like every other day.
Yes. Well, of course, I mean, we all sort of kind of cheer for Toronto teams because we
do.
are from the
We
area.
are from Toronto.
We're
But
very
for me,
happy for Fun Guy.
But for me, man, it's a mixed bag sometimes. It really depends. But no matter what happens at the end of the day, no matter how bad every team in that city is, because they're all bad right now, and I just have to live with it. I will always be a Detroit fan by heart, regardless. And yeah, and granted, like the reason being is when I was growing up, we grew up like late '90s, early 2000s, and by that time the Red Wings were the best team in hockey, like arguably one of the best teams in hockey. And I have a lot of family out in Michigan, so a lot of what was going around me was either the Leafs or the Red Wings. And because I'm me, and I'm like, I don't want to cheer for the Leafs. They sound like the good guys. The Red Wings sound like the bad guys because they're not from here. So for me, it was always the Red Wings and that championship mentality they always had in those years, even when they won their last Stanley Cup in 2008. I've always been a Red Wings guy, and I will always stand by it. And otherwise, I am proudly cheering for the Leafs. And because I lived in Boston, you'd think I'd cheer for the Bruins, but there are some days I really don't want to cheer for the Bruins, but I still will.
Not recently.
No, not. But yeah, that's more or less the quip of my love for Detroit. And with that being said, I think any closing thoughts, and we can call it.
Yeah, it was 6 games, not 7.
Did you check?
Of course.
Of course you did.
Okay.
He still got a shutout.
But it's 2015 though.
I know, it was 2015.
I guess we could
And,
say that's
My
the
mistake, my mistake.
play-by-play.
That's the life
Play-by-play.
finds a play-by-play. No, that's too much to. Sorry, Jeff Goldblum. Please don't sue me. Yeah, that's it for this first episode of hopefully many more to come of the now play-by-play podcast. This has been fun. I'm sure we'll do more at a later time when we're not all busy with things and life and whatnot. But yeah, so thank you very much for listening. My name is Yusuf Roshd, and of course joined by Mr. Anton Wong and Mr. Parse Cottrell. Thank you. Have a good night.